Welcome to Interview with the Masters, brought to you by CGMA, the CG Master Academy. I'm your host, Ben Scott. Our guest today is Fireball Tim, Hollywood car designer, TV host, and children's book author. Fireball's new book, Fireball Tim's Big Book of Wacky Rides, is now available for purchase. It features some of the craziest vehicle designs you've ever seen, and it's great for art lovers of all ages. Before we begin, a reminder that registration for CGMA courses is currently closed but will open again on June 15th. Visit CGMA2Dacademy.com to view current class options so that you can plan on signing up for the class or classes that best fit your needs. We'd also like to announce an extension on the early bird pricing for Mike Hernandez's Lighting and Color Key for Production workshop. The early bird pricing of $150 has been extended to tonight, that's tonight, May 17th, or May 18th, pardon me, and the early bird pricing is $150. After midnight, the regular pricing of $180 will resume. The Lighting and Color Key for Production workshop begins May 25th and lasts through June 9th. As always, visit cgma2dacademy.com for more information. Interview with the Masters is an ongoing series. Keep an eye on our website for more information. For everyone who is joining us today, if you have any questions for Fireball, you'll see in your GoToWebinar control panel a small box titled Questions. Kindly send your questions through the control panel. We will attempt to answer as many questions as possible. Fireball, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Ben. I'm very excited.
So if you could, I'd love to hear a short introduction of who you are and...
Sure, of course. I think I'm getting a little bit of a delay, but I am a car designer in the film industry, and I host a number of television shows for automotive-centric shows for Discovery, Speed Channel, TLC, a number of things in the past, and now, although it sounds strange, I'm a children's book author with this first book, which is very cool. This is actually really weird to be talking to my computer in this way. You know, it used to be that homeless people were considered crazy for talking to themselves, and now we do it all the time. So it's pretty wild, but I'm very happy to be here.
We're very happy to have you. So you have a long history. First job was an Imagineer for Disney.
Absolutely, yeah. That was kind of an interesting unfoldment out of Art Center back in the mid-'80s or so. I didn't want to, I loved cars, but I didn't want to go through the process of designing vehicles over the time frame that traditional manufacturers go through. I wanted to be a bit more creative, well, infinitely more as creative as I could be. And when I was at Art Center, I contacted Imagineering and decided to do a more of a theme park-based project that was still transportation-based, and invited them up for my senior thesis, which was at, I think, 7th term. And unfortunately, they offered me a job, so I got to kind of cruise for 8th term. So I knew that when I left Art Center, I had a good job to go to, and it was really kind of a turning point for Art Center, because my class was Scott Robertson and Neville Page and a lot of the guys that are doing really well nowadays. And you know, there wasn't any entertainment design back then, so it was something that was really intriguing, and we all kind of explored that. Jacques Ray, you know, a lot of these guys who were became really good artisans. And now, you know, Art Center has a very large entertainment-based program, but it was pretty cool. And my introduction, which actually is the next slide from the first vehicle that I did, I actually did this design. If you go to the next slide, or the first slide, I actually did this vehicle while I was at Art Center as a concept for Enton First, the production designer for Batman. This was before the movie was really being done, and he just wanted some ideas. So this, in doing this, these couple of sketches, this one and the second one, the next one, it kind of opened. Sorry, go back one. Never mind that. Just this one. The idea that you could design something and the turnaround time was so quick for film was what was really intriguing to me. To take something as simple as this initial Canson sketch. It's been upgraded since then, but and have that turn into an actual vehicle. When I saw that for the first time about 9 months later, it just blew my mind, and I knew that right away I wanted to go into working in film.
Mm-hmm. So you started with Imagineering. How long were you an Imagineer?
I was there about a little over 3 years. I started out, go ahead to the next slide. I started out doing New Tomorrowland, which was was going to be redesigned as anytime you design the future, it instantly becomes dated. So the following year, you go back to Tomorrowland, and that's why Tomorrowland had that very 50s look, because it was 50s version of the future. Anytime you see a movie nowadays, it's a 2013 version of the future. And the way that we got around that was by inviting aliens to Tomorrowland, and then they would give us gifts as to what their lands, what their worlds look like. And each section in Tomorrowland was going to be a spaceport. So it was a spaceport, but it housed different environments from different worlds. And that was the way we kind of got around that, having to design futurism. And this was one of the areas. But the interesting thing about this piece is that because Tomorrowland did not go that direction, this piece was one of the influential pieces for what Tomorrowland became, which is Discoveryland, and that whole idea of the Jules Vernean future, almost a retro-futuristic look. So it's pretty cool, and this piece kind of changed the course of that. But eventually they pulled the plug on Tomorrowland. I went to work on Indiana Jones ride. You can go ahead to the next slide. And I met my wife, who was a sculptor and also ended up being the color designer for Toontown. So it's pretty neat. It was a neat environment, but Disney, I eventually, after 3 years, I realized it wasn't the place for me, because the turnaround time, once again, like a car company, was a tremendous amount of time. You're talking upwards of a decade before something could actually, from initial concept to completion, would be built. And I'm just way too impatient for things like that. I want to be able to work on stuff that that can manifest in a variety of forms as quickly as possible. But I got a chance to build my repertoire as a designer, so that when you worked at Disney, they had you 1 minute you're doing this, the next minute you're doing a Western, the next minute you're doing futuristic. So you get really good at as being a conceptual thinker, and that sometimes transcends into the work itself. You can go to the next slide. And then once the tenure at Disney was over, I went actually and started storyboarding films. They laid us all off at about 500 people in one day. My wife and I took all of our junk and we decided, we're going to go freelance and see what we can build together. She went into costume design, which is where she came from, and then I went into storyboarding films, and did probably 30 or 40 movies as a storyboard artist, and really developed a good rapport with directors and things like that. So that was kind of fun. And this is actually, believe it or not, this is actually a storyboard, just cut in a different format. But this led to the initial design for the Jurassic Park gate and the films. And so it was kind of neat. It was neat to be able to explore as a storyboard artist, and that led to more keyframe elements, keyframe pieces. Go to the next one. I might get to that one next, or it might be a storyboard panel. Not sure. Or it might be nothing. Oh. So eventually it led to keyframe, and then led to more vehicle design, because I had done the Batmobile. I was pretty excited about that. I wanted to get more projects that were vehicle-based. And this was probably the first big one in 2003 that kind of launched a new direction for me. And that was, this was Son of the Mask, the sequel to The Mask, which was they wanted to franchise, but 10 years later didn't really work out that well. But in my business, the movie can suck, but the cars are always cool. So it's always it's neat to be able to see anything that you do turned into a real thing that people can go to the theaters and really enjoy. So that was pretty cool. So this was one of the initial sketches, and go ahead to the next one. which led from this initial color sketch to this final design. It went through a lot of iterations, but this final car was built in Australia, which is where the film was shot. It was an assemblage of a lot of different interesting things. The only way you can tell what kind of car it was is the basic roof line. It was a Holden Monaro, which is a Pontiac GTO here in the States. Shot a 40-foot flame out the back, and so it was pretty cool. And that was kind of exciting to say, you know, I could really start to do a lot more vehicle design and explore some different ideas there.
So what was that move like where you started as an Imagineer, moved into storyboard art, and then eventually into doing vehicle concepts? How would you describe that transition?
Well, I think it's a process of the way that we think. You know, it's hard for people to delineate really what they want. And for me, I just wanted to be not a good designer, but I wanted to be more of a visionary. You know, when I was young and I was going to college up in Ventura, I found Sid Mead's original Sentinel book, and it really inspired me because I had never seen anything like that. I found out he was in Hollywood, and I decided I was going to call him up and go down and visit him. This is back in, I think, 80 or 81. And what ended up happening is that I went down to his place. I lived in Ojai, outside of Ventura. I went down to his place every Friday for almost a year. Spent the whole day, and while I was down there, I didn't really understand what he was doing, but he was working on Blade Runner, doing paintings of Blade Runner at the time. And I just saw him as a visionary, as someone that could conceptualize in a way that was truly unique, and he would just do these extraordinary pieces, and that was very influential. And I wanted to be more grand in scope so that I wasn't limited to doing paintings of visions of other worlds or vehicles or weaponry or costumes, but I could do it all. You know, is that I think a really good designer transcends from just being a designer to being a visionary, someone that can visualize virtually anything and think about the ergonomic relation to. Excuse me about that. I have to turn off one of my panels here. I didn't know it was on. Sorry about that. Still with me?
Sure am.
Okay. So I think it's important that, you know, as a designer, as you grow, that there's really no job that you should turn down because it's either beneath you or it's something that you don't like to do. There's something to be learned in everything that comes to you, and I believe very strongly that there's hidden Easter eggs in virtually every project you do where you have an opportunity to grow, and that's what we want to do as designers and as people.
Do you have an example of a job that you might have done that you weren't initially excited for but were glad you took it because it taught you something new?
Yeah, sure. And I don't know how you guys are with bad language, but I can certainly roll with a couple of things here. But I think a turning point for me was not so much that I took a job that I didn't like, is that I realized that I didn't have to take every job, is that I could choose. You know, it's hard because people can be locked in fear because they got to get a job and they got to pay their bills. Right. But the actual opposite is the truth, is that the more that you believe that, you know, that good things will come, regardless of circumstances, what you see with your eyes, the more good things come. Now, I learned this through, I did I think it was a keyframe job. I had this guy wanted me to design a particular thing. I don't remember what it was at this point, but I did a sketch, and he was going to pay me $250, and at that time I thought, wow, you know, that's great. You know, I mean, $250, you know, and he said, I need this design. So I went ahead and I did a sketch, and it was great. But what he thought I was going to do was I was going to keep on drawing until I got what he wanted for $250. So it made this open-ended thing like, well, you know, I could draw for a week, you know, and he goes, well, that's the way, you know, that's what you agreed to, or that's, you know, it wasn't so much a design job, but you learn how to create barriers, to manage barriers for yourself, and you learn how to be a business person, because you don't learn that in school. You don't learn how to create an invoice. You don't learn how to deal with people and deal with clients. They don't have those kinds of classes. So, after this guy was insistent and it just became a big deal and he was yelling at me because I wasn't, able to do it, I calmed down. I said, I got a better idea. Why don't you take the sketch that I did, you don't have to pay me for it. Why don't you take it and just kind of roll it up and shove it up your ass? And it was a turning point for me where I said, you know what, I don't have to work this way. Is that I can be clear and I can do what's right. And but there's just people out there that can and will try to take advantage of you as an artist, because artists have kind of always been that way. But you have to be equally as strong as a business person and equally as strong as a humanitarian, and to do what's right. And I believe that the more that you give, the more that comes back to you. So if you do a piece and you just do the bare minimum, just enough, you're sending the wrong message to yourself and to other people. Is that you should do the absolute best that you're capable of at the time, and create the best work you can to forward yourself, and at the same time to inspire others to try and do the same thing. This piece that's on the screen right now, this was a initial concept for one of the episodes for Monster Garage with Jesse, and we had to build this car, which the next slide shows, in a week. It was a Panos and Esperante, and we built it in a week, and it was the only car that scared the crap out of Jesse because it was the only car that ever left the ground. He did a lot of episodes, but when he took off here and got in the air, he got to about 15 feet. This was flown in Kitty Hawk, where the Wright brothers did their initial flight. He looked out the window. There's no window, but he looked out the side, and he said, "Holy crap! I'm off the ground." We spent 7 days trying to figure out how to get this car in the air with the guys from Cessna and all this stuff, and we're all watching. And the one thing that went through his mind was we never thought about how to land. So he didn't really know how to get down. So he just kept on flying straight, hoping and praying that he'd figure out a way. And eventually, he cut power a bit and it started to come down, and he landed. And he said, but it was the only vehicle that ever really scared him. But it was pretty cool for a week's build.
That's very fascinating. What was it like having to design vehicles like this that were so crazy, but then actually have to make them exist and be functional?
Well, there's a process. The thing about being a conceptualist is that you really don't want any limitation, because you want to be able to explore as far as you can. But you do have the reality of a production designer or a director saying, okay, we do have to build this. Now, this vehicle was a concept for a film that never got made, called Six Cities, with Larry Guterman as a director. He's the one who did Son of the Mask. And this was kind of a Fast and Furious meets Mad Max type of thing. So it was a Fast and Furious premise, but with a Mad Max kind of overall look. And this was I'm sure you can tell it's a Chrysler 300, slightly modified, as you can kind of see. But yeah, totally stock. Yeah, it's awesome. If it became stock like that, I'd be first in line to buy it, especially with the blood stains on it. But it was pretty cool, But the thing is that when you're designing at this phase, you can't worry about the buildability of it. You have to think beyond that. You have to do the best you can that it looks cool, because you're designing a character. It's just like an actor. The actor has to think about what they're going to wear, what their facial hair looks like, and all these different things. But with a car, you're designing a character, and I think the next slide is from the same movie. Go ahead and to the next one. Yeah, this is a stealth helicopter that crash landed at one point, and the bad guys got it, and they turned it into this, 8-wheel truck thing with this big gun. And there's also one I did for that was a police chopper that ended up being used in the same way. So, I can't think about how this necessarily is going to be built in the initial concept phase. But when you work with companies, which I have at this point, like Cinema Vehicle Services and Picture Car Warehouse, people like George Barris, Gene Winfield, a lot of the greats, they'll take this sketch, and then there's a tremendous amount of design that has to be incorporated in trying to achieve this initial sketch so that the director gets what he wants, but at the same time has the practicality of being able to function properly. So you just have to answer those questions in a timely manner. You just not push too far forward as to how are we going to do this before you've even come up with an initial design.
Now, for a design like this, clearly, as you said, there's a helicopter, there's other elements that you've put together in this design. How do you go through that visual library that you have in your mind and think about how can I piece these things together?
Well, for me, I love the scenario of a fish out of water situation. It's taking something that we're very used to, like an ice cream cone, and turning it on its ear. It's like, well, what would an ice cream taste like if it was avocado, or or if it was an ice cream but it was made out of concrete shavings, or I think that what's fun is to explore that twisty element. It really makes it unique. And in Hollywood, every movie essentially is a combination of movies. So you can play around with that very easily. You can say, okay, what would Transformers meets I Love Lucy be like? or what would Jaws meets Star Wars? And you instantly kind of get a visual as to whether it would work or whether it wouldn't. Die Hard on a bus, Die Hard in the ocean. So when you do a car like this, and you have a world that's post-apocalyptic, the goal is, and that's what they've done in the next Mad Max movie, is they've taken elements that would never be cars and you turn them into cars. And that's what eventually became the premise for my kids' book, which we'll see at the end here, is taking everyday normal items and giving them an automotive centric spin. Now, this Border Patrol was an early concept for an earlier version of Speed Racer, and it isn't necessarily that. It's just very kind of high concept and more slick, but it's not something you would see as a Border Patrol vehicle because those are generally off-road. But if it's like this, then that means that the roads are different, that the world exists in a different capacity. So that's kind of the take on this one.
Actually, looking at this design, there are some elements of the Speed Racer design that remind me a little bit of Sid Mead in some ways, but also some things that I don't think that Sid Mead would have done with some of the crazy shapes and some of the weapons that you've pulled up on here. I think that it's a very unique way that you've made it your own.
Well, it is a process. When I was growing up, it's people frowned on tracing. Tracing was bad. But for me, when I teach and when I work with kids, tracing is a very good way to understand proportion as a crutch, as a stepping stone, to understand perspective and different things. And I say that in the sense that a lot of people will find a designer that inspires them, and they'll seek to replicate them so that they understand the process, they understand what they go through, and then they'll start to branch off into their own thing and create their own style. And at this time, back in '04, I was still influenced by my favorites, which was Sid, but also John Berkey, some of the guys from Star Wars. Joe Johnston was a very big influence for me for storyboarding. So you look and see what you like, and then the best way to understand them is to try to replicate them for yourself, and then to develop a new style for yourself. You can go to the next one if you want. This was for Mouse Hunt. This was cool because you rarely get to design a house. This was the house that, if you remember the movie, that collapses at the end. This was the first concept, just the initial rough sketch. They said, hey, just let me know what this. I worked with Gore Verbinski. What the house kind of looked like, and it went through some changes. I think the colors more or less stayed the same, but then it went to the production designers and art directors and got those guys, and they developed from there. I just like conceptually to give that feeling. If you can look at something and convey an emotion, and it's the emotion that I want to convey, then I've created a successful piece.
What I like about this particular piece with this house design is, in a lot of ways, it looks like a house that you could see, but there's an element of almost otherworldliness to it.
Mm.
That there's something that's just not quite normal, but it's still believable.
Yeah, I can't say that he necessarily said that to me, but you know, I think that as a designer, you really should challenge yourself. If you're always doing science fiction pieces, then you should do a Western piece, just to break yourself in your not in your ability as a designer, but in the way that you think. If you're doing Westerns all the time, then you should do a Victorian piece. If you're doing landscapes, then you should draw two kids playing marbles. You know, you really have to explore as a designer. And one of my favorites and a very good friend of mine is Nick Pugh. You know, Nick is extremely good on a lot of levels, but he also pushes himself into areas that are very strange and uncomfortable sometimes. And it gets you to think differently, and I think that's a good thing for designers to explore. You can go to the next one if you want. Sorry for the kind of the low res of this, but I did hundreds and hundreds of these things. These were for commercials, quick set designs. I'd get a call, and I think in one day I'd be working on 4 or 5 different commercials and doing different illustrations as to what the sets look like. This was for a Yellow Pages commercial for a cabin. And what was cool is that you could in one day be working on so many different things. I think one of my favorite assignments in school was the teacher, which I think was Andy Ogden at the time. He said that, okay, I want everyone to come in and do 60 sketches, and I want you to put the 60 sketches up on the wall. And everyone's like, wow, okay, that's not that big of a deal. I got a week to do 60 sketches. And he goes, but that's not the assignment. The assignment is to do 60 sketches, but each one has to be a different medium. So once you use marker, you can't come back and use marker again. Or once you use pencil, or once you use anything, you cannot use it twice. So we're like, whoa, okay, so that's kind of wild. So I went back, and I swear to God, I got to about 15 sketches before I burned out. It was just like, I just couldn't think of anything else to use, right? So humbly, I came back to class a week later, and I put out, I think, something like 17 sketches. And then everyone else put up about the same amount. But the funny thing is that no two were the same medium. People were using spray cans. They were using toothpaste. One guy used blood. I mean, everybody was just using something different, and it really blew the top off of the idea of establishing limitation in any way on myself as a designer. And I realized that there is no limit whatsoever. And that's the neat thing about working multiple projects, or not turning anything down, or taking something that's a little uncomfortable. It's important to be able to do those things.
Now, obviously, that was an event in your life that really changed your perspective on your approach of design. And we have an attendee here asking, what are some of your other inspirations as you design?
Other inspirations as far as people, or as far as just things in general?
I think both. We can start with people and then move on to the general things.
Well, as far as people goes, you know, I grew up as a Star Wars generation. I was 11 when Star Wars came out, so, you know, all of a sudden you just have, you know, you're inundated with art and concept and creatures and so many different things. But I was influenced by not just artists, but, you know, people that were visionaries like John Dykstra of the company was Apogee at the time. Visionaries like, you know, the original George Lucas, not the George that exists now, but I think that I was certainly influenced by my parents, who were, my dad is still alive, he's 85, and he is an absolute machine. You know, he's acting, and he's been a screenwriter in television for over 60 years. He wrote original Twilight Zones and Outer Limits. He's just, you know, just conceptual thinkers, you know, people that, you know, back when they did Twilight Zone TV series, you know, the original in the 60s, they didn't have the luxury of CG and computer graphics and big budgets. You know, they had strings and cans and things like that. So they had to rely on people and story. And I think it's very important that when you do a piece, it's not just a piece that looks good, but there's a story. There's humanity behind this. This piece right here is from the movie Pitch Black, the original. This was called a beam rider. It didn't end up being the finished concept, but I felt it was really strong. And I was sitting with David Toohey in his house, and I was drawing while he was writing. It was really a great time, a great experience. Mm-hmm. And these were beams that were shot across the galaxy, and these ships would ride along these things, and these big wings would rotate in opposite directions, and it would do all this crazy stuff that didn't seem like a ship. So, and what were the people like that existed in this thing, and how big was it? And we want to know the story of these pieces. Go ahead, go to the next one. This was for a Silver Surfer. So, in this piece, for me, it was all about what's that thing way down there. There's all these people that are traversing. This was early on in the script. The funny thing about things is you can do concept pieces that you really like, and then the writer sends in the next draft, and suddenly all the pieces that you just did are no longer in the script. So you have all these pieces that suddenly are just pieces. They give you visions of what the movie might have been, but ended up never being. But for me, it's it's neat to envision what some of those things are way in the past. I mean, way off in the distance. I just like story. I like hearing people's stories, and I like looking at pieces, concept art, and a lot of stuff that we post on our blog, and that spiders out throughout an audience of about close to 15 million people at this point. That the pieces are strong because they incite a curiosity and a vision of some kind of story, and that intrigues me. You can go to the next one. These were some props for Curious George. What would it be like to have a lazy boy that would fly? Once again, a fish out of water kind of idea that you control, and I personally think that would be the coolest thing in the world, to be able to you don't have to get up from your lazy boy. You can actually scoot anywhere you want, foot pedals and all. So that was kind of a fun project. There was a lot of those kinds of pieces for that film because they really started to push the idea of things just being wacky and kind of weird. Mm-hmm. On the opposite side, this is from the film Escape from L.A. You saw this briefly, and it's amazing that they built 3 of these chairs. They look just like this. They were, when you had the choice, you could either be sent out to L.A. Island to be killed, or not to be killed, to be outcast, or they just electrocute you right there. But they give you the choice. So some people chose to sit in the chair and be electrocuted, and you saw this chair just for a brief second. But fortunately, for me, it was a really cool experience because I was really the only designer on that film with John Carpenter. So I got a chance to design everything from weapons to costumes, vehicles, sets, props, storyboarding. I got to do a little bit of everything for almost 9 or 10 months. It was pretty cool.
I think some people might be designed how many chairs you'd have to design working in the entertainment industry.
Yeah, and I'm still doing them. I think that the later part of the slides, there's more of that. This was a piece that was done initially for, there's a book series called Artemis Fowl that still has yet to be made, but it'd be really cool. It's kind of a Harry Potter James Bond mix, so once again, a fish out of water kind of idea. And this is the fairy world that exists underground, and I probably did 34 of these quick keyframe sketches to get an idea of what these little worlds exist on a not a microscopic level, but that guy on the left is probably about 1 inch tall. So these were kind of fun, just environments underground and what their cities, what their life would be like.
Now clearly this is a very small cross-section of the work that you do. When you're working on these projects, about how many images would you say you produce?
Wow.
The hardest question of all.
Yeah. This once again, this was for Artemis Fowl. I think for Artemis, I was on that for about 4 months, and I probably did 300 to 400 pieces like this, I'd say. of various sorts. One day you're working on costumes. This was really cool. These weapons I really liked. These were called emo guns. They were emotional disruptors. So instead of killing someone, it was a deal that we were in the process of putting together, and I got to be involved with this with Super Soaker, the company that makes Super Soakers. So what you do is you shoot someone, and it disrupts their emotional stability, so they start crying and they can't function properly, or they start laughing hysterically, and you just kind of dismantle them. So it was a G-rated movie with guns that didn't really do any bad damage. But this was kind of the this is a girl that was a fairy in there. I think her name was Holly, and it was kind of a cross between the James Bond's not necessarily post-apocalyptic, because everything was a little cleaner stuff, but it had a really cool look to it. It was a pretty unique feel to the film.
One of our attendees is asking, a lot of the pieces that we see here, I assume are traditional. They appear very traditional. Do you do work at all digitally, or do you continue to work traditionally?
No, I absolutely do work digitally, and I do both at this point. But this piece is 1997, so back then, Photoshop and stuff. I'm not even sure Photoshop was around in 97. I think it was, but it certainly wasn't to the level of what people do nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
I still like working traditionally because I like the feel of what the hand does,
Mm-hmm.
and you can do that with a Wacom or with anything else now also. But I think it's a pencil to a pen. It's people enjoy using a pencil. They can use a pen also, but it's a different kind of feel for a slightly different purpose. My concern with a lot of the digital work is that a lot of it tends to look very similar. I will post 5 or 6 different pieces of art from different artists, and it's very difficult to tell them apart because the look is very similar. It's a very slick, almost Tron-like slickness. And when you do a piece like this one, you can see that it's a pencil texture and things like that. But even now, with computer, with things done digitally, is you can get that kind of texture. So, it's just to me, it's whatever works best for you. I think all techniques are good. So some people still like working in paint, and some people like working strictly on the computer and have never touched a paintbrush. And I think that's cool. I think it's opened up the box for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
You can still do hot babes no matter what, so it works out well. Now this is a kind of a combination of both. This was a little bit of traditional, a little bit of digital stuff. But my stuff tends to be very graphic. But at this point, there isn't really anything that I designed that isn't going to be fabricated in some way. So I did it. I built about, this is about 10 years ago, I built about 50 Mini Coopers for a number of different projects. We did a TV show called Street Tuner Challenge, where we built a 700 horsepower Mini Cooper police car. And these were movie posters kind of promoting that kind of thing. I think the next slide might even show that vehicle. No. But this one is primarily digital, a little bit of both. Yeah, I like exploring it. I don't necessarily work one or the other. It just depends on the mood that I'm in. These were done as toys for Johnny Lightning, some toy concepts. Go to the next one. This was initially for the Green Hornet before they decided to go the more traditional route of taking the original car. It was quite a big difference when you're dealing with, as an example, the Tumbler Batmobile is about a $9 million build. And I'm convinced that someone's pocketing $6 million because I could probably build that car for $3 million. But this car was quite a bit more expensive than taking the traditional car and creating a new version of it. So that's the route they wanted to take because it allowed more for the budget to be put into the rest of the film. That I'm not really sure how that got in there. That's
you all don't look like you know how you got in here either.
No, but it's you do get to it's great because I'm very blessed to get to work with a lot of really cool people, a lot of great people. And Chip, certainly Carson's, this is Carson Levin, the center, who's a Hot Wheels designer. We get to go around and do a lot of live events. I do about 50 events a year where I do signings um, and get to hang out and talk with people that love cars. So it's really cool. It's really a fun life, um, and as you grow as a designer, you want to explore areas that are not so much about what you do for a living, but who you are as a person. And I think that's important. And that's where starting to host TV shows and starting to get behind the camera or in front of the camera for certain things. That was a secondary passion of mine. I enjoy doing television. I grew up in a television family, and now we produce our own shows that air on the Auto Channel, that air online. We have a YouTube channel that has a couple hundred episodes for different things. I review cars for virtually all the manufacturers, so I get a different car every Monday that shows up at the house here. So it's really cool. I mean, it's just a lot of fun, and I get to see these guys from time to time, and you can go to the next one, but it's pretty neat. It's being a designer really allows you to explore a lot of different areas. This was a toy that was done for Johnny Lightning. I think the next slide is actually the finished vehicle called the Bad Mood. These are 1/64th scale die cast. We did a whole series of them, which are actually behind me. And that was pretty fun, working with them to see, how die casts are done, and they sold really well. We're going to do more of those. So you get to see, the designs that you come up with, turned into things that people can hold in their hands, that little kids can hold, and seeing the smile on their faces. There's nothing like it. It's awesome to be able to create something that you can really monetize by seeing the joy that it brings to people.
What I'm enjoying about hearing from all of your experiences is that now there seems to be a lot of focus with concept art moving directly towards video games, moving directly towards film, but there's so many different ways that we as artists can express ourselves, and we can use concepts to create experiences for people that move beyond just the idea of a film or a video game or a comic book.
Well, I think it's important to recognize that as human beings, we're all designers. Teachers design programs for their classes. Lawyers design ways to ways to get you money. I don't know. Everyone's a designer of some sort. Furniture and everything else. You look around your room that you're sitting in right now. You probably have 100 different designers just to handle the things that you're seeing, with your eyes. It's something that, to say that there's a lot of different directions that we would go would be a severe understatement. To say that it's infinite and that you could be a designer for anything that you could envision. You want to do the interior for a space station for somebody. Even this is a license that I have with a company called Lifetime Oil Filter. It's an oil filter you never have to change. This is a complete game changer in the industry. Homeland Security and the U.S. Postal Service have ordered tens of millions of these filters because the new filter that's coming out is a filter that you only have to change once every 100,000 miles. I mean, it's a blow mind. So you get to do a lot of really great things, and you have to recognize that you can go any direction that you can envision. You can't limit yourself in any way. In fact, we're the champions for that, being designers. We're the people that envision the future on so many different levels. And you get to sit there, and regardless of how much income you have, if you're having trouble and you can't pay your bills, I mean, I've been there tens of thousands of times. And what I learned is that the more I worried about it, the worse it got. And the more I accepted that I was right where I'm supposed to be, and grateful for what I have, even if it was a dime in my pocket. The more gratitude I expressed, the better things got. And now it's really blossomed, so I get a chance to do some really great things. You can go to the next one.
It sounds like in a lot of ways the idea of being a designer for you isn't just about the career and about what you do, but also a way that you live your life.
Absolutely. I certainly feel that. It's no longer about doing successful projects. It's about how, you get to a certain age where, I mean, there was an age where I would just drive fast. I just like driving fast. I like, being stupid, and if someone came up behind me in a GTI and wanted to race, I'd race him, and I'd do everything in my power to kick his ass. But there's a point at which you grow up and you go like, you know what, I don't need to do that anymore. I need to find a way to give the best of what I have to make a difference, because things shift. It's like, how are people going to perceive this? Is this the right thing to do? Is this the best thing? Is people going to be inspired by these things? This was the vehicle that I mentioned before. This was a great project. We had 70 sponsors. I created a way that every sponsor could be featured on the TV show. It went out to 700 million viewers, nearly 1 billion viewers.
Wow.
It was super cool. It was a show called Street Tuner Challenge. It was 3 teams building a tuner. I didn't want to build a tuner. I wanted to build something that would stand out and be unique. But the most unique thing about this was the next slide. It was what came out of the back of this car.
Wow.
And that's a 40-mile-an-hour RC car that not only is an RC car, but it played music. See the sub up top. It had a full heads-up display. It had the screen so you could use the radio control and see where you're going on your RC unit, and it could do donuts and play music. And we were worried that you wouldn't be able to hear the music because the motor was so loud. It was actually the opposite. You couldn't even hear the motor because it was blasting tunes so hardcore. It was really cool. And that's really the thing that people liked the most, because it was toy-like. It was just something that people didn't expect. And we didn't tell anybody that we were building this. So when we opened up the back and pulled it out, it was like, it was pretty funny. We had, you see the submachine gun on the side, or laser gun, or whatever you want to call it. It was pretty cool. And it has the little nitrous bottle on the upper left, and it had kind of a tiny little nitrous bottle.
Now, it seems lately in the entertainment industry, particularly with science fiction and fantasy, there's this focus on an extreme level of seriousness within design.
Yeah.
And you maintain a lot of the humor that we can see in art that hasn't been something we've seen for a while. How do you maintain that, and what is your perspective on that?
Well, there was a certain point where you realize that your life is up to you, and you really have the power to envision the best life for yourself, and you do that through a positive nature. The reason movies are so serious, especially superhero movies right now, is largely because of Christopher Nolan and directors like him. That he has created a new benchmark with the Dark Knight series, the upcoming Man of Steel, and it's about understanding your brand and what you're trying to convey. Now, Fireball Tim is a brand. It's not just my name, but it stands for something. And Fireball has always been my legal name, but I always fought it because people make fun of me, or who would name their kid that? But after a while, I recognized that it really symbolizes passion for things and a positive nature, and something that's positive, because we all want to feel that. We all want to feel good. But the problem is that we get in our own way by worrying, fear, and anxiety, and listening to race thought about the way things are, and worrying that people are coming up on our shores with guns, and tens of thousands of other things. If you watch television, 99% of all the shows are cop shows, and it's all about killing, it's all about shooting, it's all about all the things that you would never want to personally experience. But we're fascinated with that because we don't understand death and what happens and where we go and everything else. But for me, it's about the positive nature of all these vehicles, and at least what I try to convey, that positive tone is that if someone can look at this car right here and say something positive about it, not everyone's going to agree. I have a lot of guys say that the wheels suck, look terrible, but it's really your perspective. It's you get out of it what you put into it. I felt that this was a good project. It was the right thing to do. It involved a lot of great sponsors. It had these Sony computers in the back. It was really cool, and it was successful for what the goal was to create this for a TV show, for Discovery and for online. And I just want to have a good time. I just want to enjoy my life. I don't want to antagonize it. I don't want to create problems for myself. I just want to do things that that make me feel good. And in dealing with kids, I found that that's really the best way for me. If a kid comes and sees and he likes it, then I'm doing my job. You can go to the next slide. And that's where the brand transcends. I mean, look at this. This is ridiculous. I gave this sketch to a friend of mine, Christopher Hubbard, of Lifetime Oil Filter, and I said, we should have chairs like this at SEMA, because we were shooting a talk show from SEMA, and I thought these would be great chairs to have, with a filter on the side. And Christopher's the kind of guy that, you shouldn't be giving a sketch like this to him, because he says, oh, okay, that's really cool, because about maybe a month later, go to the next slide.
There they are.
I don't see it, but
they're showing up.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I can't see it on my screen, but yeah. So this is what shows up. He didn't tell me. He just went ahead and did it. And because it's so stupid that it's they're called drag chairs. And they were the hit of SEMA. It was really cool. We interviewed Matt Farah and Dan Woods from Chopcut Rebuild. We interviewed the president of, or the head CEO for Chevrolet. We had a great time, and it's one of those things that if you can envision it, someone should build it, someone should create it, because it's just got a tremendous cool factor, But you run into the reality of budgets and a lot of different things, and that's part of it. But there's at some point you have to you just have to go for it sometimes.
Now, particularly, well, with really any industry, but in the entertainment industry as well, there's always this focus that's on success, and at the same time, there's also a focus on fun, and that there's also a mixture between success and people having fun with that. But listening from you, it's very refreshing to hear you talk about a lot of the fun that you have. And what can you say to those that are listening to us on the topic of enjoying yourself and enjoying what you do, so that they can continue to have that passion for the work that they love so much?
Well, you have to transcend, first of all, the idea that that you have to be bummed in any way. That you have when people say to me, "Oh, you have to be realistic," that's the last thing that I want to hear, because the last thing I want to be is realistic. There's a reason that our society is structured for a 7-day week, and that we spend 2 days of that week on a weekend, because we finally get a chance to go and do what we want to do versus do what we have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And what keeps us from being able to make our life a weekend is the limitations that we impose on ourselves, our own beliefs, our own perspective. And what you have to do and learn to do is to be able to shift your perspective. And what it's done for me on a completely new route was to understand, to be grateful for everything that came to me, every job, every person, every opportunity, to look for the silver lining in everything that I could possibly find. And I realized that through that process, it's really hard to pull yourself out of a bad mood. Sometimes you just want to feel like shit. You don't want anybody telling you, you get up off the couch, you should, pull yourself together. You don't want anybody to do that. You just want to feel bad. But the effort that it takes to pull yourself up and out of that mood and go work out or go draw or go do something is the actual catalyst for making good things happen. And that's a hard thing for people to understand. But I'm here, and if there's anything that you guys that can take out of this at all, besides some cool shots of cars, and like this one, this is an awesome car, by the way. So you really have to understand that your life is going to go the way you design it. You're a designer. It's not about what you do on paper. It's about how you design your life. And you design your life by the way you look at it, by the way you perceive it. If you believe things are going well, regardless of how bad they look, then they will start to go well. And that's the way it works. And I've proven it to myself a thousand times over. And I'm successful because of it. And I didn't always look at it this way. I was as bummed as the next guy. Or worried when, my check didn't show up and, the rent's due and everything else. But you can go to the next slide. I'm kind of tired of looking at my face. But it's important that that you have a positive outlook. I mean, it's of the supreme most importance that you look at every opportunity as being something that is good for you. This was a Malibu that I did for Ben Affleck. Was built by, this is a CG version. This is not the finished car. I'm not even sure the finished car is done yet, but Picture Car Warehouse. This was just a personal project for Ben that he wanted to have this vehicle in its original color, but he liked this chrome kind of thing. But things come to you for a reason, and you learn early on that blaming anybody for things that happen in your life is not good. It doesn't help the situation. You have to have some faith in your work and your ability to be good, to transcend, to solve problems. This is one of my kids projects, and I do these just kind of for fun. This is a kids chair that I actually sit in when I do my seminars for schools with little kids, and they dig it. But you have to express. Just look for ways to express. Not everything should be because you need to make money. You should go sculpt. If you're a designer and you do 2D art, you should go sculpt. If you're a sculptor, then you should go draw. If you're a painter, then you should go do macrame. I don't. It doesn't. You should explore everything that you can. Whatever you're inspired to. Not feel pressure that you should do it. But you should follow your inspiration because it's guiding you. It's telling you the direction that you need to go.
I believe in a few more slides we have a bit of your book. I'd love to hear a little bit about the process. We're getting close to wrapping up, but I did want to get a chance to talk about and hear about what went into the new book that you've released.
Yeah. These are just vehicles that I review, so you can blast through those. This is the first book. Hold on. Okay, bye. My wife is going to the store if anybody's interested. Anybody need anything?
I need some milk, but it might sour before she can get it to me.
I hope she gets me some chocolate. That's all I care about. So this was the first book, and I wasn't sure when I first started doing the sketches. I just had this desire to create these kind of wacky, funny sketches, and my wife said that this would be a really great book for kids. But I didn't have any publishers. You suffer a lot. Artists suffer a lot from the fact that once the art is done and they're successful at creating the piece, now what? What do you do with it? Do I make a book? Do I, artists aren't generally the best business people. But that's something that I would say that right after you've gone to art school, you should go to business school or at least take some business classes and learn how to market and how to promote and how to brand build. So this book was an expression. This is actually not the finished cover, but pretty close to it. And I wanted to create a book for kids because there wasn't any kids' car books. But I have a tremendous love for animals. The book benefits, part of the proceeds benefits the National Mill Dog Rescue in Colorado. So there's a tremendous purpose behind the book so that part of those sales will help dogs that are being poorly treated in mills. And it teaches kids, it takes these images like this rescue boot and gets kids to think in that fish out of water kind of approach that they can design and do anything. Kids will come to a show, a live event or something, they'll bring a book that they bought and they'll want to show me the wacky rides that they've drawn. And that's just really cool. It's just something, this is the windbreaker. This is a fart-powered cow being helped by some skunks going to the fartology seminar. And these are just fun to do. And you know, if you have kids or if you have friends that have kids, and I just realized that there wasn't any kids' car books, you know, and I wanted to be able, as a legacy, to be able to create a variety of these books. This was me talking with Jay in his garage about the launch of the book, and we talked about the subsequent book that's the Big Book of Wacky States that we're putting together. The Design Studio Press is the publisher.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just really cool. It's, you know, it's a very different feeling to be able to have a tangible item as opposed to doing some art for a film or for a video game. Especially something with your name on it that you can hand the kid this thing, and you watch the kid flip to the pages with a smile on their face, and you go, you know what? There's nothing you could sell the book for that would be of a value that is more valuable than seeing that. And so it's a great opportunity to be able to share some of these wacky ideas. I think the States book might be next. So these are, you know, a automotive take on the United States. When I was, I read an article about the head of the school system here in Los Angeles, 600,000 kids, and these kids didn't know where they lived. They were fifth graders, and they couldn't tell you what state they lived in. Some of them said Mexico or Los Angeles, or, you know, and I thought that, you know, kids are visual. We're all visual. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to create a book that was a funny, wacky car, but also had state facts. You know, the bottom illustration is the Kentucky Bluegrass Derby, so instead of riding horses, they're riding guitars. The upper right is a snowblower, rocket-powered moose. A Boston College on the left. I think if you go to the next slide, there's actually a couple of pages from the book. The flamingo, this is obviously Florida. A bunch of flamingos escaping town to head down to the Keys. And then you know, it shows, these are illustrations, but it doesn't show what the actual page looks like, which includes a wireframe of the states, where the state is located, some interesting facts, funny facts about it, about the state, things that people wouldn't necessarily know. And then we have our social, what we call our social kingdom, which is our ability to get a lot of this information out to a good-sized audience through the blogs. I write for a number of different media periodicals, Malibu and Santa Monica Patches, Autoholics, Street Fire, about 50 in the network. So it's a way to share, you know, cool things like the art that you guys create. You know, if you guys have art that that you want to share, you want to get out, something you're really proud of, email me the piece, you know, and we'll include it in our thing and get it out. If that helps you guys to get a job or people to see your work, you know, that's what we're there for. That's what we want to be able to share.
I believe your website information is on the next page here. You're on Facebook as well as having a blog at fireballtim.com and YouTube as well.
Yep, yep. So, you know, it's just, it blows my mind now that we're at a point in our technology that you can get on Facebook and I can be talking to someone in real time virtually, and they're in Bulgaria or they're in Australia, or, you know, it just blows your mind, doesn't it? I mean, it's just really cool that, you know, we're all literally next door, and I like being able to help people to share, you know, things that are cool, and the brand is basically Automotive Hollywood. It's how cars relate to how Hollywood uses vehicles in their movies, and how the opposite, how the automotive industry is affected by what Hollywood does, and mixed in with a lot of humor and fun and wacky kid stuff. So it's we're having a good time.
Well, I gotta say, Fireball, I really enjoyed talking to you today, and I'm sure that the attendees here have enjoyed it as well. I have to say that all of your work is excellent. I really enjoyed seeing that, but of all the interviews that I've done, you've really had the most encouraging message, a message that we can all take home with us, that we should be not only designing our work, but designing our lives as well. So I appreciate getting to hear that from you today, Fireball.
My pleasure, my pleasure. It's certainly a challenge, but we're all up to the task. You know, I think that above and beyond our trade and making money, we have to be good people, and we have to strive every day to improve ourselves, to be an accumulative personality. and through that we become champions for others. So it's a good feeling to have. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Fireball. And before everyone leaves, I do want to remind that the registration for CGMA courses is currently closed, but is going to open again on June 15th. So please visit cgma2dacademy.com to view current class options so that you can plan on signing up for the class or classes that best fit your needs. And again, we'd like to announce an extension on the early bird pricing for Mike Hernandez's Lighting and Color Key for Production workshop. The early bird pricing that was due to expire yesterday, May 17th, is continuing today, May 18th until midnight. That pricing is $150. After midnight, the regular pricing of $180 will resume. The Lighting and Color Key for Production workshop begins May 25th and lasts through June 9th. As always, visit cgma2dacademy.com for more information. Again, you're listening to Interview with the Masters, brought to you by CGMA, the CG Master Academy. I'm your host, Ben Scott, and today we had Fireball Tim with us. And a huge thank you, Fireball, for coming out again.
My pleasure. Thanks again, Ben.